someone back from the dead.
An addict, do I gotta have it? I ain't even playing.
Two beautiful women enter the lobby of St. Paternus University, California. They are going to the laboratory to meet their colleagues who are members of a small research group called the Lazarus Project. Led by lovers Frank and Zoe, the group consisted of Clay and Nico, while Eva was hired as a cameraman who would document all activities. For 4 years they have succeeded in creating a serum called Lazarus, which is derived from fast-growing tumor cells modified to repair nerve cells quickly, which in turn the serum is expected to give a second chance at someone's life. So they wanted to document this achievement. In the recording, Frank tells of the tools and functions they use. He showed electrified heart rate controller in which the power supplied through a flexible arm. Frank explained that the serum would be inserted through the flexible arm needle to the brain, and to trigger the reaction there is an electric shock that will be delivered. That night Zoe was again disturbed by the same dream in her sleep, due to a childhood traumatic incident where she was once trapped in a burning apartment. The next day they were back together in the laboratory. Frank and Zoe looked confused by a problem, but Clay proposed a solution that no one else thought of.
Boom!
And their impasse finds a way out.
Clay? Yeah, you're all grown up, alright?
Their Lazarus serum was tested on a dead dog with cataracts in both eyes. Frank injected the serum into its brain and Zoe began to shock it with a 5 kilovolt electric current. There was no reaction on the first try. So Frank asked Nico to increase the power to 11 kilovolts. But second try still doesn't work, so it makes them almost give up. Eva said she saw the dog's ear moved, but Clay thought it was just a muscle reflex stimulation reaction, so Zoe pulled the syringe out of the dog's head. But finally, it turned out that the Lazarus serum was able to revive a dead dog and made his cataracts heal. Frank asked everyone to keep the success a secret, then they celebrated by drinking together. But later they realized there was something strange with the animal. He had no appetite and often seemed to stare with a blank eyes. So they CT scanned the dog. They found that Lazarus serum doesn't all enter the brain, but some go to the bloodstream to form new cells, so according to Clay the dog could anytime become aggressive and dangerous. But Zoe ignored it. She brought the dog home to be raised. When Clay was busy with his work, he was startled by a noise from the kitchen and he found the contents of the fridge has fallen apart. Seeing the caged dog escape, Clay looked around the room. But the animal suddenly appeared beside him. The next day Frank was called to see the university administrator, who telling him that his group had wasted of funds but didn't show results. That day all the tools and facilities in the laboratory, including the access key to the laboratory, also confiscated by the Krylonis Pharmaceutical Company as a new shareholder. Didn't want to lose the results of 4 years' research, Frank and his group intended to duplicate it. Luckily Zoe kept some of the serum and Eva's access key escapes from confiscation so they could quietly enter the lab. Frank intended to test the Lazarus serum again on another dead dog, and Eva would record it as evidence to the world that the Lazarus serum is the result of their hard work. Nico immediately hacked into the security system, while the rest got things ready. Frank started to inject the Lazarus serum. But when Zoe pulled the lever of the electric shock, suddenly the electricity in the room went out.
2, 1.
It turned out that Zoe neglected to take off the ring she was wearing, so that as a result she was electrocuted and died instantly. In a panic, Frank tried to help her in many ways, but to no avail. So in desperation he decided to resurrect Zoe using Lazarus serum.
Frank, what are you doing?
At first Clay, Eva, and Nico didn't agree, because experimenting on human is crossing a line, and if the police find out they will be arrested and imprisoned for performing a legal experiment. But when Frank insisted on doing it alone, his friend finally pitied him and gave their hands.
9.5 kilovolts. 1.
In the midst of that effort, Nico informed that there was a security coming to control the area. He reminded his friends to hide. After the guard left, suddenly they saw Zoe rise from the dead, which made Frank very happy. But Frank felt that her behavior changed, so they decided to find the cause out by scanning her. Through scanning, Clay found that in addition to her body recovering, there was also a lot of activity on Zoe's nerve cells. He was worried that the effect of the serum on Zoe would be like to the dog, being weird and violent, but Frank denied that all and took Zoe out of the scan machine. Frank clearly saw her strange behavior when he put a necklace on her. When Frank spoke in his heart, Zoe could respond quickly.
You've just been through a traumatic experience.
It turned out she could read people's minds. Moreover, she also has the power of telekinesis, where she is able to move objects with her mind. So Frank went to his friends to tell them what's wrong, but Zoe could hear everything they said and her heart hurt.
That's such a bad idea. Did you not see the dog?
When Zoe washed her hands in the sink, suddenly the mirror in front of her cracked, and from the mirror image we know that Zoe is now possessed by demon, or the serum has awakened the demonic power within her. The dog smelled the devil's presence, so he growled. But unfortunately she used her telekinesis power to kill it. Zoe herself felt something wrong with her.
When I died,
She tried to tell Frank that during her death she was trapped somewhere in a place for years, but Frank kept denying and telling her that it was only a dream. He asked her to take a rest, and when Eva covered the sleeping Zoe, she thought Zoe said something in her sleep. Curiously, she put her ear closer to Zoe's face, and suddenly she enters into a dream that has been haunting Zoe all this time, where she was trapped in an apartment that was blown away. A creature grabbed her left arm, and when Eva came back to her senses, she found her left arm wounded.
and the building was on fire.
This mysterious situation became even more tense when Nico discovered the fact that their movements all this time have been silently monitored by Krylonis Industry, where through the computer it is known that Krylonis continues to download all their recorded activities, and the last download was 20 minutes ago. Finding this fact, Frank asked his friends to pack all their equipments up and leave the lab immediately, but at that time, without them knowing, Zoe turned into a scary figure. Heard a scream. Nico immediately checked it, however. When they were ready to leave, they couldn't find Nico and the dog. Clay suspected that it was all Zoe's doing. He's mad about this and tried to call security, but Frank stopped him and said if he called them, they will know that Zoe is a reanimated corpse and they will place her in the laboratory and cut her into small pieces to be researched. Clay answered in his heart, "That's exactly what I will do." Zoe heard the answer. When Clay insisted to call security, the electricity suddenly went out, and as a result the lab room was locked, so there's no way out. The irritated Clay keeps accusing her of being the cause of all this mess.
I want to know what happened to Nico!
With her telekinetic powers, she stuffed an e-cigarette down Clay's throat so he choked to death. Now Frank and Eva realized that Zoe killed Clay and Nico. So Frank planned to kill Zoe so that she wouldn't hurt any other people. But his mind was read by Zoe, so... Zoe then injected more Lazarus serum into her body. While Eva, who left alone and couldn't escape from the lab, had no choice but to fight back. She kept some anesthetic injections in her shoes and desperately searches for Zoe. When they met, Zoe with her powers made Eva re-enter the dreamland that traumatized her, and there Eva again met a girl who turned out to be the little Zoe. Eva also found out that it was Zoe who caused the fire in the apartment, so Eva asked the little girl open the door that is considered to be a way out of Zoe's past trauma. And when the door opens and Zoe is free from her past trauma, Eva uses the opportunity to inject a high dose of anesthetic into Zoe's body so that she died. A few moments later the firefighters came to save Eva, but it turns out that the officer is Zoe. To know what Zoe was thinking, after killing Eva she was seen injecting Lazarus serum into Frank, and...
I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, gotta really